Look at that. Well, we've got to somehow get across that. Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're back in West Sussex at the village of Stedham, which is about 2 miles to the west of Midhurst. And we're going to be doing a roughly 5-mile circular walk, taking in the villages and hamlets of Stedham, Trotton, Chithurst and Iping. And along the way we'll be crossing, I think it's 3 heathland commons. We'll come across 4 churches, the enchanting River Rother, and I expect a few other interesting things along the way. Now I'm filming at the end of October. The sun is out and there's a fair bit of blue sky. There is quite a wind though, and it is quite autumnal. So Logan's got his fleece on today, but should be perfect conditions for walking, so do come along with us. Well, I've parked my car at a free car park on Iping Common, just to the south of the A272, which is the main road from Midhurst to Petersfield. And we are inside the South Downs National Park, and initially we're going to head across Iping Common. And see, there's a little information board just behind me here. And here we go. So that's where I parked the car. So we're going to follow this path across Iping Common and then head northwards for the first part of our walk. So we're going to look out for a Roman road there. So this is Iping Common. Stedham Common is to the right there. The trail that's marked purple here is actually the part of the Serpent Trail, which is a 64-mile long distance path from Hazelmere in the north to Petersfield in the west, and it snakes through West Sussex, as it's only actually 11 miles between the two towns as the crow flies. I tell you, it is a glorious autumnal day now. A little bit of a wind coming from the north, but it makes it nice and fresh. But it's beautiful up here. I say up here on Iping Common, together with Stedham Common and Trotton Common, Natural England say it's one of the richest areas of heathland in the country. And from here I've got some superb views to the south on the South Downs. I'm conscious that this time of year the sun is very low, but there we go, there's the South Downs on the horizon there. So we're going to continue in this westerly direction. I'm just trying to see if I can spot any semblance of a Roman road that should cross the track at some stage. Well, isn't this a beautiful view, looking a sort of northwesterly direction, but real typical heathland, isn't it? Now I think we may well have crossed the Roman road that I was looking for, but it ran from well, Chichester in the south to Silchester in the north, and it was only discovered in 1949. It is tricky to make out. It does show on an Ordnance Survey map though, and there are a few Bronze Age barrows about, and the area was used by Canadian troops for practice in World War II, so you might find the odd trench from time to time. We're now on Trotton Common. We're now going to start heading northwards You can probably hear the A272 in the background. We've just got to cross that to our next destination, which is our, well, it'll be our first church of the walk at Trotton. Well, just before we come off Trotton Common, I just wanted to show you this pond that's just behind me here. It's called Black Pond. And, well, it does look quite black, doesn't it? We had to fight our way through some undergrowth through a little path to get here. But it looks wow, certainly well filled today. We've had a lot of rain recently actually. And then the building on the other side of the road is a garden centre. There's been a garden centre since the 1930s, I believe. It used to be called Ailings. I think it's called something else now. Well, I've made a little detour off the route to have a look at our first church of the walk at Trotton, which is just behind me here. And isn't that wonderful? It's St George's Church, and most of the structure was built in the 14th century. However, some parts date to 1230, and there may have been an earlier church on the site. Historians have debated about its age. Certainly the tower dated by architecture to 1230, but some historians suggest it might be 14th century. The porch appears to be a 17th century addition, and it had a major restoration in 1904. As you can see, it's a nave and chancel with a western tower, and there's a fascinating little wooden door halfway up the wall on the southern side. Now there's some fascinating things inside the church, so hopefully we can get in. In we go. I just hope the light's going to be good in here, because there's something quite fantastic to see. Look at this up here on the wall. Now, these wall paintings, they were discovered in 1904 when whitewash was removed. They're from the 14th century. So at the very top you've got Jesus, and then underneath Moses with the tablets of law, and then on the right, spiritual man surrounded by the 7 acts of mercy, and on the left you've got carnal man surrounded by the 7 deadly sins. Well, isn't that fantastic? So obviously there's the font down there. Again, there's more of these paintings along the wall. And now just make our way. So yeah, very impressive organ on the left there, and some wonderful stained glass windows. But another fascinating thing to see in front of me here, it's not going to be easy to see. It's a brass, and there's a sort of plastic cover on top protecting it, so I might just have to put up a photograph of it instead so that you can see exactly what I'm looking at. But it's a 9-foot table tomb, so it's right in the middle of the chancel, and it's of Thomas de Camoy, 1st Baron Camoy. He died in 1421, although this brass actually states 1419. He fought at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, and the brass here is of his wife, and I think that's his son at the bottom. But apparently it's one of the biggest and most ornate and best presented brasses in England. As I say, there is actually a picture of what it looks like. There we go, down in front of it. But wow, it really is a superb church. Now, what I've been trying to find in the nave, apparently there's a ledger stone and brass of Margaret de Camoy, died in 1310, which is the oldest known brass of a woman in England. But somewhat embarrassingly, I can't find it. We'll just come into Chithurst, I don't think there's actually a sign that tells you when you're in, but we're crossing the bridge over the River Rother, so we're definitely here. And there's some lovely properties on the way through. Just on the bridge here, well, the River Rother, which we will be following for a while. Well, it's looking quite angry today, close to the top of the bank there. We've had so much rain recently, and it does flood quite a bit, this river. But we need to now look at our next church, which is just hiding behind the trees here on the left. And here we are. You can probably hear the River Rother on my right. Our second church just behind me, and it's tiny. Isn't that quite exquisite? This is St Mary's Church, and this one was built round about 1050, and it has obviously Saxon features. Possibly it was built on the site of an earlier pagan burial mound. But it's so small, with just a nave and chancel with a modern timber framed porch. Most of the windows are 13th or 14th century, although the window on the north of the chancel is one of the original 11th century ones. And that quite cute stone belfry was added in 1885, at which time there was some fairly substantial restoration. And I think the fact that there is boggy soil around here may be the reason why it was never extended. Okay, in we go. Now, this could well be a challenge for the light, because I don't think there's any light in here. I have got a little spotlight, but I don't know if it's going to be much use, but hopefully this gives you an idea. It really is it's your Saxon feel to it, that's for sure. Lovely little church. And stained glass windows up at the top of the altar here. And just up there, I think that is one of the oldest windows here. But I love this, I really do. And there, with the spotlight, is the font. Well, the church does have a macabre story attached to it. Back in 1757, the rector, John Denham, was stabbed and murdered on his way back from Stedham, and a chap called Apps was found guilty, tried and hanged for the crime. I really did love that church. So we're now, we've left Chithurst and we're heading eastwards towards Iping, and we're on the northern side of the River Rother. Speaking of which, I don't know if you can see behind me, just at the edge of the field, it actually has broken the banks on this side. So fortunately there's enough of the field left for these quite gorgeous horses, nicely wrapped up in their Rambo rugs. You're quite a stunner, aren't you? Well, this little bridge here that we're going over takes us over a stream called the Hammer Stream, and that flows down from the north and it joins the River Rother, and we'll be seeing the Rother a little bit closer very shortly. Well, Our church fest continues. Church number 3, St Mary's at Iping, just behind me here, and looking quite lovely in the autumnal sunshine. Now the present church is 19th century, but it stands on the same site as its medieval predecessor, which was probably had Saxon features. The old church was actually pulled down as it was too small and was replaced in 1840, but that was then considered too big and unsafe, and a few decades later it was rebuilt again in 1885 whilst retaining the original tower. And in we go. A little dog bowl with some water in. Just what the Logan could do with. Now this certainly, it does look much more modern, doesn't it, than the Chithurst church. Certainly very Victorian, but very well presented. Beautiful. And there's the organ. I love these lights, that sort of lantern effect. And there's the font, and then looking up into the tower above. We're now crossing the River Rother over Iping Bridge. The Rother is 32 miles long, and it flows from Empshot in Hampshire over to the west, and then all goes to the east at Stedham, where it joins the River Arun and then flows out to the sea at Littlehampton. But it's certainly in full flow now, as I probably mentioned. Now over to the other side, there used to be a mill here for about 900 years that had various usage. A paper mill was established here in the 18th century until around 1880, when it was used to make blotting paper, until 1925 when it suffered a major fire. After that, a corn mill operated until the Second World War. It was a timber mill until the 1970s, but all traces of the mill have gone. The Iping Mill House here today isn't connected with the former industry, I believe. And just on the other side of the bridge is Iping House. Now the Lord of the Manor used to live here, and there was a manor house dating way back to 1086. But in the early 1800s it was bought by Admiral Sir Charles Hamilton, at which point it was 4 times larger than the house today. It became a hotel in the 1930s, but it became derelict after the Second World War, and most of it was demolished, and the stables and barns pulled down. Just behind me here, the coachman's cottage that was originally linked up with the manor house. So we're now on the south side of the River Rother, making our way to Stedham, just past a little sign that says we're on the new Lipchis Way. It's a 38-mile long-distance path from Liphook in the north down to West Wittering on the coast. It was originally established in 1985 when it just went from Liphook to Chichester, and then it was extended to West Wittering in 2008. So it should be called the Lip West route. No? I'm thinking too hard. Well, I'm just about to come into the outskirts of Stedham now, and I tell you, the Rother's pretty high now, and that's Stedham Bridge over there, and well, you can't see the arches. I mean, it does flood fairly regularly, and I have seen the water go over the bridge, but even so, it's certainly in full flow. Really noticeable now how the leaves on some of the trees are beginning to turn that golden brown, very much an autumnal sign now. Now I love this little stretch of road. There's a Stedham Bridge, and then just in front of me, Bridgefoot cottages. And this place brings back some really happy memories for me, because just on the left here, a place called Bridgefoot Farm, many years ago it was stables, and I used to have a horse 15 years ago, maybe even longer than that, and he was stabled in here. It's now just a private residential house, but you can tell it used to be a farm before it was a stables. Look at those lovely milk churns there. Anyway, my horse, his stable was literally behind that wall there. He had some many happy times. Right, we are now going to head in this direction. We're now on the northern bank of the Rother, which we're going to follow, and this will take us to Stedham Mill eventually. Now, just behind those trees, I'll see if I can get a decent photograph, is Stedham Hall, a 16th century building. It was the home of the lord of the manor, and the Scrimgeour family bought it in 1910, and the estate was wound up and sold in the 1950s. I think it's now 8 residential flats. Now, we're definitely not going to do a dog dip today. I don't think I'd be able to get you back. Just a little pit stop to admire the view looking north as the sun starts to gradually get lower in the sky. You get some beautiful shadows this time of year. Well folks, we have a challenge ahead of us. This is Stedham Mill in all its glory. Look at that. Well, we've got to somehow get across that. I think we're just about going to be able to make it. Now, there was a mill here at the time of the Domesday Book. That was involved in blotting paper production, but the building was burnt down in 1901 and replaced by a turbine driven mill which was demolished in 1927. Now I think I'm going to have to hold Logan while I cross this, and so you might not see this on film. We did it, just. Well, right next to where the mill used to be is this quite magnificent building, the mill house. A chap called Commander Norman Holbrook lived here in 1914, I think it was, when he was 26. He was the first member of the Royal Navy to be awarded the Victoria Cross. He was in command of a submarine that dived below 5 rows of mines and blew up a Turkish battleship. A very brave man. He died in 1976 and he's buried up at Stedham Church. And this is our 4th church of the walk, St James in Stedham. And there's been a church on the site well before the Domesday Book, possibly 1040, and alterations were made in 1673. But in 1850 it was decided to build a new church, and just the tower of the old church was retained. The south porch was added in 1885. It's a 4-bay nave with north and south aisles, a south porch, lower chancel and a vestry with a west tower. And literally just to the side of it is this magnificent yew tree. And I came across a copy of a certificate signed by folk including David Bellamy, the botanist and TV presenter, indicating it at least at 2,500 years old. And I was reading that it was measured 8 years ago at 29.5 foot in girth, and in 1880 it was 28.5 foot, so it just shows you how slowly it grows. But what a wonderful specimen. And just to the right, on the other side of the wall, is Stedham Hall. Well, we'll have a look inside. I cannot find the switch for the lights, so it's going to be pretty dark in here, I'm afraid. But hopefully it might give you just a little bit of an idea of what it looks like. I don't know what the shopping trolley is doing in the middle of the aisle there, but a lovely stained glass window at the just above the altar there, and a quite magnificent organ as well. But there are plenty of lights here. I just can't find the switch. We're just making our way through Stedham village now. Such a pretty little settlement, lots of lovely houses full of history, and this one just behind me here in particular, it used to be a pub built in 1792 known as the New Inn. It closed in 1962. Lovely to see it's got the name the Old Ale House, just showing what it used to be in the past. Well, we're very much on the homeward leg now. Just before we leave Stedham village, we're going to pop into our one and only pub on the route, the Hamilton Arms, which is just behind me here. It was built in 1939 as an addition, or in front of an original building, which was a beer house. As well as a pub, it's a Thai restaurant, and the good news is it's dog friendly. Well folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We thought we'd do the end scene here, right by Stedham Mill. I think we should get paid danger money for this.